Fire Facilities manufactures steel live fire training towers, customized to meet your training needs. Check us out at FDIC or learn more at firefacilities.com.
In firefighting and public safety, reliability is key. For over 20 years, the Fire Store has equipped first responders with trusted gear featuring brands like MSA Carnes for helmets and Seek for thermal imaging cameras. Stay prepared. Visit thefirestore.com today.
It's another beautiful day.
Heck yeah, man. I'm super excited for this. There's a double guest this time, and somebody who's very near and dear to my heart, just as a mentor, a friend, educator, and just everything. Love him to death. My brother-in-law, Dr. J. Mack Slaughter.
Hey, man, you're making my heart feel good with that. I love that, buddy. And I love you. Thank you for letting me be here, dog.
Well, you make it easy, man. That's for certain. And I'm super stoked to have you on here, man. Not only because of your ER service, but so many things that you've done in your past and so many things that you have going on in the future. But the first thing we have to kind of cover just for all the guests is what's up with the boy band thing?
Yeah, I think it's good to lay that as kind of the groundwork because everybody's going to be like, what's this doctor with like the swoopy hair? And then you find out, oh, he was in a boy band. Oh, I see. Okay, it all makes sense now. Yeah, man. Yes, I was in a boy band when I was 15. Had the time of my life, though. Got to perform in front of a huge audience. 4,000 people showed up to our very first concert.
Whoa.
And it was just like so invigorating. And I've been working hard performing my whole life musically. Got put on stage when I was 3 years old with my family singing group. And so to be able to all of a sudden be in front of like 20,000 people, it was like, I've been waiting my whole life for this, you know? But it was a boy band, and that wasn't like the type of music that I listened to. And that's not the type of music that I wrote. And so there was like this bittersweet interaction there. And
you do have this extremely eclectic like range of music. Every time I get in your car or get around your kids, there's going to be something playing, and it's wide spectrum.
Yeah, it's awesome. That's actually my favorite game to play with my kids. Like when we first get in the car, they're all waiting for it. You know the game when it's like shotgun, right? And everybody's like waiting for like everybody coming out together, and then somebody yells it. That's what happens when we get in the car and I say, who wants to listen to a song first? And everybody goes, me! And like a lot of times they just tie because they are so fast after me asking that question.
They're just ready for it.
They're just ready for it. Yeah. And then we like Rochambeau, we paper, rock, scissors to see who actually gets to choose a song first. But the songs that we play are just so radically different. And it's just wonderful like that. I love that my kids get exposed to all different types of music.
That's awesome. Now I have to ask, because I think it's important, what's your go-to karaoke song?
You know what? It's funny because I've done a lot of performing my whole life, and there's something about karaoke. I don't know, Landon, do you feel like this? Because Landon, as you know, I'm sure is an incredible performer. He's an incredible rapper. Just lyrically, like every time I'm like, hey, Landon, just like throw something down on this beat. And I'm just like, how does he do that? You can still do it. It's so incredible. But there's something about karaoke that's like, it's like bastardizing something that like I have worked so hard at for so much of my life that I almost like don't want to do it or participate in it. But I will say, when I've had a couple drinks and I'm like, okay, it would really feel nice to like have a mic up, I sing, looking back.
Oh, yes.
On the memory of. For those of you who don't know, that's a little Garth Brooks action.
That was good. That was good.
Ever since people know that I rap, especially going to 7X, and Brian would always be like, "Yeah, he's a rapper." Like, do you do what? And so they made me get up, and everybody always does the same thing. Well, do you want to do Eminem? Do you want to karaoke Eminem? And I don't think people realize how difficult that actually is. That breath control,
right?
And so I did it in South Africa, and because I had a few drinks in me, but anywhere else I can't do karaoke.
Oh
but
my gosh!
You did the boy band deal, and you've done acting, but so much of that translates into your later life, and also what you're doing with the family now. Tell me a little bit about, because I've heard bits and pieces, the journey of going from, okay, here I'm an actor on a TV show. I did the boy band. I love the music. What drove you into a completely different realm of getting into the ER service.
Well, I had a moment. Where I crumpled to the floor in Los Angeles. So basically, I'd moved out to LA. I'd been out there for 4 years, and I was initially going to pursue, a career as a solo singer-songwriter. I'd been writing music since I was like 13. I moved out there when I was 17, and then got like pulled into acting. And the whole concept behind that was, if I, can make money doing acting and I can kind of get my face out there, somehow this is going to propel my music forward, because that was always my heart. My heart was always in music. And after I did a TV show for a year, I was on a sitcom, and then I did this movie called Fat Albert with Kenan Thompson, and then I signed this deal that like might not even exist now, that Hollywood doesn't have FU money, because it seems like they're starting to like tighten up, the purse strings a little bit. But I signed a 6-figure contract to not work for any other network. So the WB, the Warner Brothers TV show or TV network, paid me to not work for any other network. And the idea was they were going to find me another show, and they didn't want to share me with anybody else. But then they didn't find me a show. And so I was like living the dream, and that I was getting paid to not work. And man, I felt worthless. I was just like miserable. I was like, what is my purpose? I went from being on this TV show where every single day I was meeting new people, and it was so exciting, and I was growing as a person and as a performer. And then all of a sudden I'm like just sitting and I'm waiting for projects to come to me. And I would distract myself. I was, lifting weights and like, skateboarding and mountain biking and surfing and all this stuff. But then I ended up breaking my hand skateboarding, and it took away all those distractions. And it was just like, look at your life. You will get to this point again where you are right now, just waiting for projects to come to you. How would you feel being a 41-year-old male with 3 kids, trying to take care of, and support your home? And my mom had always ingrained in my head that I had to support my family, and I had to do everything that I could to give my wife the opportunity to stay at home with the kids, which like, thankfully that dream came true. But I knew that I couldn't fulfill kind of that promise that I had made to my future wife had I stayed in that lane. And there was one phone call where I called my mom, like from the floor. I was on the floor and I was curled up in a ball, and she was like, "J Mac." And I was like, "Yeah," and I couldn't even really tell her what I was feeling or why I was feeling it. I didn't even really understand what I was feeling and why I was feeling it. But she said, "J Mac, it's okay to come home." That's all she had to say, man. And I was like, okay, all right. Okay. This was fun. I had a lot of success out here. How lucky was I that I got to be in a TV show and do a movie, but I don't have to do this for the rest of my life. I'm not a failure. It's okay for me to go home. And then it was like, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? This is the only thing that I've known how to do. And I've been climbing this mountain for, since I was like 3 years old, to like be successful and actually like make a means to an end in entertainment. And the idea of just like getting a job was just like, I can't do that. I can't just go get a job.
What is job? What is
job?
What is job?
I knew that I had to like long for something. I had to pine for something. I had to think about it all day, every day for years and years and years. And then to me, there were only two things in that realm, and that was become a lawyer or become a doctor. And at the time, my sister was telling me all the coolest. Can I cuss on this? Can we cuss?
Yeah. No, we go towards firefighters. So
okay. You're good. All right. Yeah. She was telling me the coolest fucking stories about working in the emergency department and life and death, and doctors leaping down onto a guy's neck that was like just squirting out blood from a carotid artery, injury from a knife fight. And this wasn't even like a trauma center. And the doc like ends up holding this dude's neck all the way into the OR, where a vascular surgeon just like happened to be in the hospital that wasn't even on call. And I was just like, I want to be that guy. I was like, what do I have to do? And it was 11 years of training. And I'm just so glad I did, because I love my job and I love my life. And I love your sister, Landon, and she's an incredible mother to our kids. And it turned out, she never told me, but it was always, her her dream to be a stay-at-home mom as well, despite all of her ambitions and everything. She's just like,
and she's very ambitious, and she's very intelligent, but she has always her nurturing nature, as I'm a product of it. When reading her book, she's talking about taking me into school for the first time, and like she's holding my second grade hand. She's like, even whenever she gets to class, she's thinking, oh no, Lana might have gone to this, the wrong class or something. That's just her ingrained.
Yeah.
Dude, and that's it's really interesting that you talk about like that. You want to be in that, because I think that's what a lot of firefighters can connect with. Is, I remember when Kelvin came from the military to go into the firefighters, and he's like, I just want to be in that hot room. I just want to be with that hose. I just want to break some doors down. And then there's all this other stuff that comes along with it that you don't realize whenever you first go. It's like, oh, you are going to be very impacted by the lives that you're saving and the lives that you're losing.
Absolutely.
And I know that we won't get too much into it, but I got to witness you going through, getting your degree and coming and hanging out with the kids and seeing how long you had to be gone and all that kind of stuff. Talk to us about, finding that goal and finding that purpose, but the suffering that had to go along with it for the goal to come out as beautiful as it did on the other side.
Oh yeah. I mean, there was so much sacrifice. There were nights where, this is like early on, because there are different phases of, becoming a doctor, and you're pre-med and you want to be a doctor so badly, but there's just like zero guarantee that you're actually going to be able to do this thing. So there's a lot of anxiety associated with that. And I remember, I would study to the point where, because it was all note cards at the time, I would make just stacks and stacks and stacks of note cards, almost every single thing that came out of the professor's mouth. And I would be falling asleep to it, running my note cards, and I would wake up when a note card would fall on my face. And then I would I keep studying, and then I fall asleep and a note card fall on my face, then I keep going. And I mean, from those struggles to actually getting into med school and knowing like, oh my gosh, I can do this. I can be a doctor, and experiencing, patient interactions for the first times and patient deaths for the first times, and to becoming a resident and getting just like too seasoned and just like too comfortable with death and sharing the most horrific news that you could possibly think of to patients, to me walling my heart off. Did you feel along the way? I obviously knew, and I felt it. So for instance, there was a moment that this was like the moment where I was like, am I even human anymore? There was a room full of people who came directly from church, and they were all just like dressed, to the nines. And it was probably 8 or 9 people, and their friend had like passed out, and family member had passed out there in church, and it turned out her heart had stopped. And I mean, we worked for 45 minutes to try to bring her back, and we couldn't. And I told that whole room that their loved one had passed away, and they are like audibly like wailing, like screaming and wailing. There's just like so much deep suffering, genuine suffering. And I just like, I didn't feel it, man. Like I didn't feel anything. And I was like, what happened to me? Like, what is this cold, dead heart in my chest right now? And it took a long time to like work myself out of that. And now you can feel it probably in the way that I'm talking about things, that I have my full range of emotions back. And maybe it's like the pendulum swung. I don't know. Like maybe it's like, there's chronic sleep deprivation or something like that. But now I feel like I can fully, be present emotionally with my wife and my kids and my patients again. And I think that's just an absolute blessing. And that's a really multifactorial, road, I think, to getting there. But being there along the way, did you feel that from me? Like, did you see like the glaze in my eye?
There were some times, primarily just when you'd come home, just after, just hours and hours of being on. But I mean, you've always, at least the family side, you've always had that generosity and open heart and open home kind of policy, and which is hilarious, because that's like the kind of house that I grew up in. Like everybody was always at our house, and now it's like your home is like had become a bit of my home for awesome. For so many years, and getting to be the uncle that I did and am and stuff like that. And so I never saw too much of that, but Great. I do know.
I guess I'm like, good. I hid it from the world.
But I do know, and I do remember how COVID affected you. I
Yeah.
do remember that probably being the first time that I saw you, and maybe Zach, you can speak to this. The being in the hospital, being a burn survivor, and seeing all this, because both of y'all share this from different angles. The trauma that you have seen and experienced, either from the opposite side of the mirror or something. Zach, have you had those emotions where you've had to wall yourself off? You've had to kind of shut down?
Oh, absolutely. I think, coming to realizing the extent of my injuries, realizing, that the fire had happened, that I had lost my friends, there was a certain point where, your brain and your body's really good at going, this is too much for me, hold up. And then you compartmentalize, right? You rationalize, you put things in the neat, tight little box that they're supposed to be in. And so that was what I did for my mental health sake, is I wrapped it up in these neat little tiny boxes in my mind, and I said, I will deal with this when I can. I have surgeries to take care of. COVID was on the horizon. We didn't even know what this was. And so I went from living in the hospital to a living facility to living in the hospital again because of everything that was going on. And so I think in a lot of ways, I fully understand the different dynamics that you live in when you're going through that.
Totally. Zach, how long were you in like the burn ICU, for instance?
I was in for 18 months.
18 months in the burn ICU?
From
or in inpatient treatment total?
From what was considered like the emergency ICU to then the step down unit, 4E to 4T. But I had somebody watch me basically all night when I slept, and then all day when I was awake, and had to learn. I had to relearn everything from walking to feeding to, using the bathroom independently. So
it is. You are so deeply inspiring to me, buddy, because I was a first year resident when I took the burn ICU pager overnight for the first time, and it was.
That's right. You did Parkland and Parkland UT Southwestern.
Yep.
Oh,
I was in the burn ICU for months, I think maybe 2 months, and it was mostly nights, and a lot of times it was just me and some of the sickest patients in all of the world. Yeah. Honestly, I mean, the skin, we forget how many different functions the skin has until we don't have it.
Well, it's our largest
you know that intimately.
Right? Yeah. And you see people with 30%, 15%, 68% in my case.
68%, my God, buddy.
With my particular injury, like my ICU room for months had to be kept at 98.6 degrees.
Yes.
Body temperature. My parents.
You're just rapidly losing all of your moisture to the environment.
Yes.
You're no longer holding in the water that, your body cherishes and works so hard to hold on the perfect amount of, because the kidneys are so good at balancing. You can't have too much water. You can't have too little water. And then 68% of your body is just evaporating water rapidly. I mean, how many liters of fluid do you think you got over that 18-month hospitalization?
Oh my gosh. And the other thing that you don't think about at a burn unit is like, you have to consume so many calories a day. So you're not allowed to drink water.
Oh.
You have to drink, these boosts, breezes, things that are high caloric intake. You got an IV, so you're getting your liquids that way.
I mean, God, your body's just working so hard to fight infection and to try to regenerate. Oh yeah. My Lord.
And I was very lucky. I was able to donate all my own donor skin, right? But a lot of burn survivors have to do very experimental things. They have to do cadaver skin. They even at one point in time grew my skin on the back of a mouse because they didn't know if I was going to be able to donate my own skin. And so that's another thing that goes along with the burn trauma is, okay, well, he's stable, he's patient, but we're worried about where the skin's going to come from. And, then you get into the recovery aspect of it all. And that is.
And you were how old when you
20.
You were 20. Wow.
Yeah.
And right at the time where you're trying to figure out who you are and
yeah.
find your
Yeah.
independence, like socially and financially and physically and all this stuff. And then instead you're like wondering where your skin's going to come from. Is it going to come from a mouse, or is it going to come from your leg? Or
Yeah.
gosh,
I had finished my 2-year degree program at my hometown university, and I transferred to another university, and I was there 10 days. And on the 10th day, that's when someone set my apartment on fire. So like, I didn't even really get to experience like the independence of living on your own. You know what I mean? It was just, and again, this is one of those things that we harp on with when we get to speak to college students and young adults is like, hey, learn from me. Let's talk about fire safety.
Yeah.
Let's talk about where you live in. Like,
yeah.
I know when 5th grade happened, Sparky came, got a coloring book. You learn stop, drop, and roll. But let's touch on that again, right? Yeah. You're going to go off and live on your own for the first time. Let me be an example of the stuff that I wish I would have known, so that you can live a safer, better life.
Yeah.
And I would imagine in the same way. Well, I appreciate that. In the same way, you see things that you're like, well, let's be proactive. Let's prevent these things. Let's build a path forward for those walking behind.
Well, you know what you're doing. That is my favorite psychological phenomenon. It's a defense mechanism called sublimation. Sublimation, when you just take terribly painful, traumatic experiences in your life, and you can take that and it could go down very negative paths, obviously. But one of the ways that you can kind of protect your mind and uplift yourself and others is to use that experience to educate the public, or, to teach them how to prevent this, or to start a nonprofit that ends up benefiting X people in however many way. But you're taking these terrible experiences and you're turning it into something really positive that benefits, a very large community. And that's what you're doing. And I love it, buddy. I love it.
I think it's an active choice that you make. And, one of the things that I thought of, and it was very important to me, was I lost my 2 roommates, and three other young adults didn't get a chance to live their life. And so every day, and even on my hard days, I remind myself that I am lucky enough to be here. And if I am lucky enough to be here, then I want to do something to honor those that aren't. And I think that's kind of the motivation that gets me out of bed every day, is like, okay, let's hit the ground running. Let's do this. Let's remember those that are impacted and make the world better and brighter for them.
Mm-hmm.
Sublimation.
100%.
I'm gonna have to Google that.
Sublimation. Isn't it beautiful?
That's amazing. And J-Mac, and you've taken, and I remember hearing about this so many years ago. You've taken what you grew up doing and what you continued to love with the passion and the music, and then you melded it with your passion for medicine in a way that I find absolutely extraordinary. Could you talk to us about Music Meets Medicine? Where did the idea come from? What does it mean to you? And what are some of the steps that you take with the people in the hospital?
So Music Meets Medicine is a nonprofit that I started when I was an undergrad at TCU, shortly after experiencing just like the power of music in the hospital setting. And my mom was getting treated for breast cancer. She had stage 2 breast cancer. She had radiation. She had chemo. It was something like 16 surgeries when all is said and done. And her very first chemo session, the whole family is there with her in the room. And this particular type of chemo has the side effect of turning your fingernails and toenails black. It can make your fingernails and toenails fall off. And my mother had already had surgery to remove both of her breasts. She had lost all her hair. It's like all of her identity as a woman was being stolen. And she's like, I'll be damned if my fingernails and toenails are going to fall off too. And so theoretically, you can take your fingers and toes and you put it in ice, and that vasoconstricts your blood vessels. So your blood vessels are all of a sudden tighter, and the toxic chemicals that are floating around through your bloodstream, less of it actually gets delivered to the fingers and toes, because that's not where we need it anyways. We need it to go to this area, right? And so they're like, do your best. It's going to be really painful. But try to keep your fingers and toes on ice. And she has my willpower. And so for basically the whole hour, she had her fingers and toes on ice. And you remember being a kid and putting ice on your head when you get like your head kind of hurts. And you're like, like you keep it on there for like 20 seconds, 30 seconds. You're like, it hurts too much. And we just watched her in pain and suffer for an entire hour. And we were like, we have to do something to change this experience. And I was like 23, maybe 22, maybe 21, actually. I was very young, for me. And all of a sudden, you go from thinking about yourself all day, every day to like, oh my gosh, this like incredible human being who's dedicated their entire life to me is suffering like this. How can I change that? And we, my sisters and I decided to bring our instruments to the second chemo session.
Wow.
And like that hour, just like boom, flew by. And it was not only tolerable, it was like fun. And there was just love and, nostalgia in the room. And this is kind of before music therapy was really a thing. And people were wheeling past us, and they're like, hey, can you come into room 304 next? And we were like, well, okay, and just after feeling that power, and how magical it was, it just felt like magic. I was like, I can't just ignore that. What am I going to do with that? And so I didn't know how, but I just asked my buddy whose dad was a lawyer, I was like, hey, how do I do this whole nonprofit thing? And so it began, and it was just like baby steps for years and years and years. And at this point, we haven't even really totaled it up, but we've raised somewhere over $500,000 for music therapy, to support current music therapy programs, to grow music therapy programs that don't really exist. We raised $150,000 to create a jam room at Dallas Children's Medical Center. Man, talk about a dream and talk about a struggle. I made that commitment. I was like, we will raise this money. And then 3 years later, I was like, oh my God, I only have $40,000. How do I get to $150,000? But man, there's something, anybody that's listening to this, it is very overwhelming to take on really big goals. But if you're truly passionate about it and it's a cause that's like truly worth it, people will help you get to that end result. It's overwhelming to take on really, crazy tasks and crazy goals. But people see your passion and they see that you're about to fall flat on your face, and then, just brain power starts going and you talk about things enough. And, I ended up coming together with a radio show that was nationally syndicated, to raise the last of the money. And it became the Kids Music Meets Medicine Therapeutic Arts Room. And we finally got to that finish line, raise the money, and, it's there now. You can go in and jam on drums and jam on guitars and work with music therapists, which that money helps to support. And it's a wonderful thing to be a part of. And that's one of the reasons why I have my heart back.
Heck yeah.
I gotta say that is so inspiring to hear. Just you can tell just talking with you the love and appreciation that you have for what you do. And so I think just on my end, I've seen a lot of doctors, I've seen a lot of surgeons, and to see somebody that is so forthright and so thoughtful with their care, with their patients, it's very inspiring. So that rocks, man.
Thanks, brother.
Well, and so the kids that's what you do whenever you take the kids to Disney World, right?
Yeah. So Kids is a separate nonprofit that I've been on the board now. Actually, just finally rolled off, but I was on the board for somewhere between 8 to 10 years. Basically, that's one of the reasons why I was inspired to start a nonprofit, because the radio show that put together my boy band, that's the reason why 4,000 people showed up to our first show, is because the radio show had all this reach, and actually the listeners ended up like voting on who was going to get in the boy band and stuff. So thank you, Kid Craddock listeners, for voting me into the boy band, because it changed my life in a wonderful way. Yeah, Kid Craddock. Yeah. Yeah.
Rock on.
Yeah. So Kid Craddock was my boy. And he would take us around and we would go sing at the hospitals together, for patients and stuff like that. I remember Scottish Rite and I think Dallas Children's, he would take us around there and stuff. But I always heard about Kids. And then Kid Craddock just tragically and suddenly passed away about 10 years ago. And I had been working with his daughter, Caroline Craddock, in the hospitals with Music Meets Medicine. And when she found out that her dad had passed away and that she was inheriting this like radio empire and this nonprofit, and she just had no idea what to do with it. She was like, hey man, I'm helping with your nonprofit. Will you help with my nonprofit? And I was like, all right, let's go. Let's do this. And it's a beautiful nonprofit. They take kids and their entire families who are struggling from chronic or terminal illnesses to Disney World. So we all get on a plane. There's a South shout out to Southwest Airlines. They donate a plane, and the Southwest employees donate their time. And kids that have never even been on a plane because they've struggled so much, medically and financially, they've never even gone on a family vacation. And we take their whole family to Disney World. And it's just this beautiful escape for multiple days. And been doing that for about a decade now personally. And they've been doing it for, I think, 30 years now, which is just really crazy.
I always love seeing the pictures. I love seeing the pictures whenever you're out there. It's so incredible.
It's so wonderful.
We do want to get into your experience since we are Sons of the Flag and we are a burn survivor nonprofit. Yeah. That's where our primary focus is. What are your experiences? Like nearly 500,000 people are burned every year. Small, large. You've had to have seen some things. And what are some of your experiences with being in the ER and seeing burn survivors?
Honestly, Zach, I don't want to offend you, man, but when someone comes in and they have had a 68% total body surface area burn, you wonder in your brain, how in God's name is this human being going to survive? How are they going to survive this? The wounds are just so significant. And like we were talking about, I mean, the functions that the external surface of our body does that we take for granted all day, every day. And for all of that to just be irreparably taken away in a moment. As a physician, it's hard for me to understand how that person survives. And many people don't. So many people don't. But at the same time that you feel that overwhelming, fear that this human's life is just in grave danger, you also have a big sense of responsibility that despite the slim chances that this person is going to survive, we are going to do absolutely everything we can possibly do to give them the best chance of surviving while keeping them as comfortable as possible.
Kind of in the same vein, sorry, Landon, but kind of in the same vein, you're taking care of numerous people in the day-to-day operations, burn survivors, emergency medicine. And I would imagine, that is a very exhausting part of your job. How do you take care of yourself too, while taking care of numerous people?
Yeah, the answer is I didn't know how before. And that's how I got to that point where I just watched an entire room of human beings have the hardest moment in their life. And I felt nothing. And it took a while. It took a while to get my heart back. And man, so much of it comes down to the simple things that like all of us know, but are so hard to actually execute on it. It's sleeping right, which God, you have so little control over in medicine.
Oh my goodness.
It's eating right, which God, you have so little control over in medicine because you're working a 30-hour shift and then you go home and you sleep like 6 hours. You're going to wake up and meal prep for like an hour and a half or 2 hours, And so you're just eating any and everything that's around you. And when you're so sleep deprived, when you're in such a deficit there, your body just craves the quick and easy energy. You just crave carbohydrates and greasy food. And in addition to like not having the time to be able to eat right, your body doesn't even want that stuff. Your mind is telling you what to eat. And it's not the stuff that you should be putting in. Physical exercise too. Same thing. Like, how do you do that when you work so hard and you sleep so little and you have kids and you have a family and it's just, but you're right, Zach, you have to take care of yourself. You have to figure out how to make it work. And during those 3 years of residency, God, for neurosurgeons and plastic surgeons, them going up to 7+ years, I don't know how they did it. Those 3 years were hard enough for me, man. But the minute that you get that time, it's like you have to rewire your brain into being this like machine that is constantly being productive and working towards this end goal. It's very important that you do. It's very important that you do all your training and you do all your testing and you do this and you do that. But at some point, when you get to some sort of a finish line and you become an attending, you have to start just radically changing all of that, because not every second of every day should go towards this one thing, because there's a reason why the suicide rate is as high as it is in medicine. I should just say, there's one day it's going to reach a breaking point. And what's better for your patients and your community? It's that you, one, survive, but two, that you are being the absolute best physician that you could possibly be. And I think it is not a large leap to say that if you are in just a terrible place mentally and emotionally and physically, there's no way that you're going to be the best physician that you could possibly be.
Yeah, there's no way you can be the best human that you can possibly be. I wish Bemis was on for this, because this is a topic that's very near to his heart and to my heart, having struggled with so many different mental issues in my past and drug addictions and stuff like that. And Zach, I'm sure coming out of the burns, the mental faculties are so wrecked. Can you speak to the importance of, not really I don't want to phrase this, you and I had this conversation one time, and you were talking about how nurses needed to fill out this thing that said, how they were feeling or whatever. And if they put in mental awareness or needed some mental, had mental stress, firefighters are having to do the exact same thing. And then they get flagged for trying to open up about their mental health. Yeah,
and they're getting a big problem. That's a big problem. Huge shout out to the Dr. Lorna Breen Foundation. Thank you guys for what you're doing. There's a nonprofit out there that is fighting this good fight, day in and day out, actually. And what Lane is referring to is on the credentialing applications, both at like the state level, every time historically. Now things are finally starting to change a little bit, which makes me really, really happy. And I am like very proud to have been a small part of that change through raising awareness online. But every time we would re-credential to basically say that we could legally practice medicine in the state of Texas historically, who's changed it amazingly, in other states, they ask you a question. They're like, have you, and it differs per state, but Alaska was the most invasive, have you ever experienced depression, seasonal affective disorder, bipolar, schizophrenia? I understand that they want to protect the public from a doctor who may be compromised mentally. But through asking those extremely invasive questions, you are inhibiting that provider from seeking the help that will then protect society from any sort of issues there. You know what I mean? And so, okay, like I understand if you floridly believe that, we're in like 1759, and these like humors are going to, cure somebody by injecting, okay, I get that. But when it comes to something that such a high percentage of the entire world experiences, especially people who work in medicine and physicians, the very existence of that checkbox asking whether I've ever struggled with or been treated or sought out treatment for this ends up being very, very counterproductive for the general population. And thanks to efforts from the Dr. Lorna Breen Foundation and some other big medical creators and, great news articles that have been written since COVID and the wave of burnout, people retiring early and ending their life, there have been some significant changes there. But there are a lot of states out there who haven't. So,
and what's become really apparent to me, just being around first responders, having family in first responders positions and firefighters and whatnot, is you're there to do a job, and then there's this entity behind you that just doesn't have your back. Like they're almost looking for a reason to cut the cord.
Yeah.
And when you're injured, they're going to find every reason not to give you any single dollar that they can.
Yeah.
When you need help, they're going to try to get you out of having the therapy necessary to get back on the job and do what you need to do.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's disappointing, but it's nice to have seen a bit of a shift.
It's starting now. And I'm so proud of our community for coming together and really pushing that change forward. And I hope the same thing happens for all frontline workers, truly.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Zach, Zach and I were running down the list of like, we got to get some questions. And I hit up Zach and I was like, listen, man, you're the burn survivor. You're the mastermind of this. And I know you're going to have questions from our brother-in-law. So I wanted to set the floor for you and Zach, fire away.
Sure. One of the things that I wanted to ask you is, some people may listen to this podcast who want to get into medicine or are looking at a career in that. And so what advice would you give to anyone, whether they're looking to become a burn resident, work trauma, or go into any medical field in any capacity? Is there anything that you want to say to them as far as like, take care of yourself, don't worry about X, Y, and Z, be wary of burnout, those sorts of things?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. It's such a balance because you have to get yourself to the point where you will become a doctor. And so there's almost times where you just like almost have to burn yourself out along the way to make sure, that you do get into medical school. And it does get more and more and more competitive. But along the way, there needs to be like this gradient that you have in your brain is that you have to push so hard, but you have to know when and where you can finally take your foot off of the gas and take those moments and truly try to rejuvenate your physicality and your brain, and do everything that you can, while succeeding, along the way to put processes in place, that will keep you mentally and physically healthy. It's that balance. I don't know how I would truly, if I could truly strike it much better, going back and doing it again, which I would never do. There's no way I could do that twice. But I mean, the important thing is I got there eventually. I hope that I hear more and more about med schools that are addressing more of the problem kind of along the way. And I just, one bit of advice I'd say is like really heed the advice that you're getting as a med student. Cause you get into that mindset. Like I was talking about, you're like, just got to get to the next place. Just got to get to the next place. Just have to guarantee my spot in this program or whatever. And then after that, I'll kind of focus on, myself and my well-being. But along the way, I'm hearing that programs are starting to incorporate kind of tips and tricks, and support for well-being along the way, and just do your best to absorb that stuff and try to integrate that on a daily basis.
In the same vein of well-being, again, you're taking care of a lot of people in a day-to-day operations. I imagine that that's really taxing too. How do you take care of yourself, and what do you do to, pour into your own cup, per se?
I mean, yeah, people look at me like I'm crazy when they find out how many things that I'm involved with, because I am involved with like a ridiculous number of things, everything that we've talked about. Plus I do social media. Plus I'm a partner and kind of like a marketing company. I just have a lot of projects I'm involved with, but everything that I do doesn't drain me. Everything that I do fills me up. So
that's an important distinction.
Yeah. So there are, not everything that I do makes me money, but everything that I do fills me up in some way. And like the sweet spot is when you're filling others' cups at the same time that you're filling your own. And just like everybody's happy. Like the nonprofit world is so beautiful to me because I always say this, like if it's done right, it always comes down to the people who you're trying to impact in the community, right? Like they come first.
Yes.
And if they are positively impacted, that's a huge win, but if the donors are able to see and feel that positive impact in the community, then they win too. because their cup is filled. And
Yeah.
the people that are on the administrative side, that can be a little bit taxing, like the operations. How do we even pull off what we're trying to pull off? That can be draining in some ways. But when you finally get to experience that good that occurs in the community, then your cup is filled too. And so just if nonprofits are done right, everybody can win and everybody can be positively impacted. And I love that so deeply. And so to answer your question, I take care of myself by engaging with things that I'm truly passionate about.
That's beautiful. I freaking love that so much.
Mhm.
I think that, pouring into your own cup as you pour into others, like you said, is so important, right? Like you, through your work, through your vocation, pour into others and give yourself to others, and you take care of others in such a heartfelt and beautiful way that you too deserve the same amount of love poured into yourself. And
Yeah.
it makes me very, very happy that
Mm.
you recognize that, because I think it's very easy to get bogged down to accept, oh, I don't need it right now. I got to focus on other things.
Yeah, it feels
Yeah.
selfish to say, honestly, like how much I feel like I get in return. And I've never gotten a dollar from any of the money that I've raised. It all goes to the charity. Of course, we have like 1099 people that we pay, independent contractors, to help us operationalize all this stuff. But I've never taken a dollar from it, but I get paid in many, many ways. The most beautiful way, hold on, because I got to plug my computer in. Sorry, I forgot to do that earlier. But I'll tell you, the most unexpected way, I should say. The most unexpected way that the universe paid my wife and I back for our nonprofit work is that, we've been doing for years, in addition to Music Meets Medicine, we started giving out scholarships and awards to fine art students in the Fort Worth area. There's this big award ceremony, and Landon's there every year helping out and taking pictures and taking videos and everything. It's beautiful. We've given out somewhere over $60,000, I believe, in scholarships, and well over 100 something awards. I don't know the specific stats right now.
It's a large group.
It's a lot of people, and it all just started with like, maybe we should give out one award, and then it was like, maybe we should give out 13 awards, and maybe we should take care of 5 schools, and then maybe we should do
the number
whole
of talented people y'all have is it's mine. As a theater kid myself, like you go in there, you watch these kids, and you're like,
They're all so amazing.
how are y'all so talented?
They're so good. They're so incredible. Yeah, I'm like, I wasn't that talented. Like, glad I know how to like rally people together for causes, because like I can't do that myself. But this was the most unexpected way that the universe ended up like giving back. And my wife and I had been looking for a long, long time for like our dream home, for our forever home. And, and it was always this one specific neighborhood in Fort Worth. And we just dream about being there. And it's a very safe neighborhood, and very like in your brain, you're like, everybody kind of wants that 1950s, like let your kid get on a bike and just like ride away and you don't have to worry. And it is that. And so basically, our realtor, who was in like Mexico or something, is like, hey, this house is like a pocket listing, meaning it's not on the market yet, but it's going to go on the market too. You need to see it today. He was like, this is the one. And we went into the house, and we just like immediately were just like hit so hard. And not only did it just like fit everything that my wife and I had dreamed of for so long, but my wife is an extremely talented ballet dancer. I've actually like danced in New York with the School of American Ballet, which are like the Juilliard kids and stuff. And she also did this one program with the Paris Opera Ballet that only 30 kids in the whole country were chosen for. Like, incredible dancer. And we walk into the house, and in the dining room, there are point shoes hanging. The dining room.
Serendipitous.
Yeah. And then like on the walls, there are all these like pictures of like ballerinas and like little statues of ballerina. And she's like, did they stage this house for me? Like, are y'all just like tricking me into wanting to buy this house? And so we ended up like, making an offer on the house, which was at asking. But it became very clear when it did go on the market the next day. We asked them not to. They were like, no, we're going to put it on the market, see what happens. And they just got tons of offers. I don't remember how many. It was something like 5 offers, 6 offers. And then they had 3 more people that were going to come see the house, and realized that it probably was undervalued a lot, honestly. And they were like, all right, best bids, last best bids. Like, what can you do? And we really we really couldn't go any higher. Like we were maxing our budget to get to their asking price. And we were like, please tell the owner about just how much we love the arts and how much we're going to fill this home with music and dance, and nonprofit work. I'm just hoping, somehow they'll find out and maybe connect with us and have some sort of emotional reaction. But the realtor's like, I'm not going to tell my client that. I don't want him to make an emotional decision. I want him to make a financial decision. And so they never did tell her about us, but she Googled. The person who owned the home went to Googling the different people who wanted to buy her home. And she started reading about Rebecca and I's work in the community, and the fact that Rebecca trained at the same place in New York that the person who owned this home trained. And she had 2 kids who, had just, kind of went off and become independent, and she was ready to downsize. And the thought of filling this home with little ballerinas and little musicians, outweighed her desire to make maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars more. And she said, she was like, this is your house, I don't want to hear any other bids. This is your house.
That's amazing.
And we were just like, what? We actually my sister happened to be at the house, so she was filming it. Rebecca, my wife, is holding 10 avocados in her hand, putting groceries away, when we get this phone call from our realtor that's she doesn't want anybody else to have the house. She wants you to have the house. And we're like, what, are you kidding me? It's just the most beautiful thing in the world. And it's nothing that I ever would have ever foreseen in, doing the nonprofit work that we do. But it's beautiful how the universe will give back sometimes.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
You knew you were going to make me cry.
I figured it was going to happen. I was like, I'm going to see my brother-in-law cry. I know it's going to happen.
I mean, it's not hard to get me to kind of well up for a second, but to get a tear down my face is you gotta get me, man. That one gets me.
All it is a window into how passionate you are. It's something that I've admired about you ever since I met you. I do have to say this. The very first time that I saw you, it was a talent show, and I think I was in first grade, and I was playing a bird hand puppet. And I was behind a board, and the other guy that I was doing it with was the main act, and I was just up there. And his mom designed the thing really cool. It had different little pulley deals, and we could throw stuff up. So I thought I was just sweet, I'm a puppet master. And then I'm sitting down in the pit at a Country Day, and then all of a sudden the girls go, J-Mac comes on stage with his guitar and starts singing Elvis. And I just remember, because I was a little ladies' man myself, I just remember looking up and going, you son of a bitch. And then years and years later, my sister tells me who she's dating, and I was like, that son of a bitch.
Oh my God. Perfect delivery, dude. That was hilarious. Oh my God. So funny.
But I say that to say this. It was, even seeing you there kind of from a lower angle, and then now getting to see you from this part where your passion and your love and your appreciation is so incredibly massive, and it's like outstretching arms. There's a reason Rebecca's favorite animal is an octopus, because that might as well be you. Your arms are reached in so many different directions around so many different things. Cool. And I am forever blessed to call you my brother-in-law, and to call your children my nieces and nephews. And I love you, and I'm so happy you were able to come on here, Bubba.
Right back at you, brother. I love the hell out of you, man. You're a beautiful person, and we've talked about it before, but the transition that you have been able to make in your life is just incredibly inspiring. You may not have the scars on the outside of your body to prove it, man, but I know you've gone through a lot. You've gone through so much, man. And like we talked about at the beginning, we all know what it takes to bring, more happiness into our lives. But ultimately it's very, very hard to execute on those things.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, to be able to execute on those things that are going to improve your well-being physically and emotionally. And then, after going through the things that you went through emotionally as well, to be able to just completely open up your heart to somebody as beautiful as the person, you ended up marrying. It's,
She made it easy. she made it easy, man. Well, and and I, to have both of y'all on here, honestly, it's coming from what I was putting myself through and going through mentally for you and Rebecca to have my back, and then for y'all to open up your home and let me be the uncle that I always kind of wanted to be, and get to have that release and then working with something like Sons of the Flag and seeing individuals who are overcoming this. I, like you said, my scars and like my trauma has always been on the inside, but then to see these individuals who have literally walked through hellfire come out on the other end and kind of look life in the face and say, "You're not stopping me. Like, that's not happening."
Hell yeah.
It changes your perspective. And I truly believe this. I had plans to end it in 2016. And if it wasn't for all of these things lining up, the love of my family, love of my sister, your support, being an uncle, working with Sons of the Flag, meeting people like Birdman, meeting people like Zach, all along that road, I wouldn't have had the emotional capability, the mental stability, or the cognizance and the work ethic to keep going. And because all those things fell into place, I've never felt more blessed and never been happier in my life.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to not believe in fate and destiny.
Yeah. 100%. Zach, do you have any other questions? I know we're coming up on our hour.
No, this is a beautiful podcast. I feel very verklempt. Just overcome with wonderful, good emotions.
Me
I
too,
feel
man.
great. J-Mac, it is an honor to talk with you, and I really appreciate you fielding our questions and just being so amicable, so kind, and giving us your time.
Well, we talked about doing it before. We need to make it happen. Whenever you're in Dallas, Fort Worth, let's make some educational videos and let's positively impact people's lives.
We've just left. This will be released in March, but we are recording this during the week of Fire Prevention Week.
Oh, great!
Which is extremely important, just for our organization, for Brighter Than the Fire and Sons of the Flag, Zach's educational side, and the fewer people that have to come to your ER with burn injuries, the better.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts with prevention. Starts with letting people understand how to use your fire extinguisher, check your smoke detectors, how to use a blanket, know your exits, how to use a blanket, pay attention to your lithium batteries, people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's getting worse.
That's what it comes down to in the emergency room as well. When somebody is truly dead or dying, and it's your job to bring them back, it can just come down to the simplest thing. Do you know how these two things twist together to be able to deliver oxygen to this person that needs it? You know what I mean? It comes down to the simplest things to keep someone alive. But if you're not aware of that, and if you haven't practiced that, then it gets real bad real quick. And so those simple steps that you're talking about, it seems very similar in my brain. If you don't know how to use a fire extinguisher, like, how are you going to put out the fire? Like, you got to know that ahead of time. You got to think about that ahead of time. You're going to be freaking out in the moment.
Keep one in your car, keep one in your kitchen, keep one in the places that you think you're going to need it most. And they save lives. They save lives, and they can stop things. And if they're not to put out the fire entirely, like Zach always says, they're to get you out. They're to give you some space.
Oh, clear a path, baby, clear a path.
Yes.
Oh, yes. I didn't even really think about that. I'm learning, man. Thank you guys. That makes so much sense. When you say that, I'm like, well, duh. You're gonna put out the whole fire in the whole house if the place is going up in flames.
It's just to get you out safely. Those firefighters got on the gear. They can get in and put out a fire.
That's somebody else's
fire
job.
Extinguisher is just to make sure you can get out.
Look at you, man. Look at you. Educating the public, educating me. I love it. It's beautiful.
All right, J-Mac. Follow J-Mac on all social media.
Dr. J-Mac. Dr.J-Mac.
There you go. Follow across social media. Incredible videos that he always comes out. And I love that your advocacy side, those are the videos that I personally love the most. Just kind of as a little lefty and little protester back in the day and stuff like that. I caused a few troubles, but I like
it's
it.
kind of a dangerous world to post in. I'm worried it's going to come back and bite me at some point, but I want to make positive change in the world, and so I kind of go for it.
Well, you're advocating for people who need it. You're advocating for the people in your community who need it, and for, it's the fact that United Health is going after them when the one doctor is absolutely ridiculous, and the pharmaceutical companies really need to be taken to task, and something needs to give, so people are receiving the care that the doctors that I know, the nurses that I know, that I've grown up with my entire life, want to give them.
Yes, we all want to give. There's so many. There are just so many, just like sinkholes in between physicians and patients, between providers and patients. There are all these like vacuums. They're just like, whee! And just trying to like suck up as much money as it can. And we're just like, we just forget all that. Like, how do we just efficiently and safely improve people's health outcomes? Forget all the business. Screw all the business.
Yeah.
We just want to help people. That is the overwhelming majority of people in medicine want to simplify things that are at the bedside, want to simplify and make this doable. So many other countries can. Why can't we?
They certainly aren't there to make a buck. They aren't there to make the buck. They didn't go through 8 years of hell in school. They didn't go through nursing school. They don't clean the elderly and clean bedpans because they want to make $1. There's a lot easier way for very attractive nurses to make $1. Totally. So yes, but I love seeing when something really hits your heart. It's clear, and you're not afraid to kind of stand by that, and I love that. And I love you, and Zach. Always good to see you, brother. And
pleasure, y'all.
Great having you on. And I'll let Bemis close us out.
Later, guys.
Fire Facilities manufactures steel live fire training towers, customized to meet your training needs. Check us out at FDIC or learn more at firefacilities.com.
In firefighting and public safety, reliability is key. For over 20 years, the Fire Store has equipped first responders with trusted gear featuring brands like MSA Carnes for helmets and Seek for thermal imaging cameras. Stay prepared. Visit thefirestore.com.